Well, let me be the first to welcome you this afternoon to the 2013 National Rural Futures Conference that kicks off tonight with our Join Heerman lecture here at the University of Nebraska. It's a pleasure to see everyone here at Nebraska Innovation Campus. I know that we have a lot of folks joining us at satellite locations throughout the state of Nebraska, and a satellite location for the Rural Futures Conference itself at Curtis at our Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture. So welcome to all of you. We look forward to a great couple of days ahead of us. My name is Ronnie Green, and I have the privilege of serving as the Vice Chancellor for the Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and also am currently serving as the Interim Senior Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs for the UNL campus. I'm very proud of the fact that we're at a place, at a university, that understands and recognizes grand challenges and recognizes that it takes transdisciplinary work, that it takes all of us working together on these grand challenges, whether it be across university campuses, whether it be with private partners, whether it be with communities, all working together around these big grand challenges that we face. The Rural Futures Institute at the University of Nebraska was formed with that in mind. And just as a little bit of walk back through history, for those of you who may not be as familiar with the Rural Futures Institute, this was an area that was started by the University of Nebraska first in 2002 with what was known as the Nebraska Rural Initiative, an effort that was put in place by the university to work around particularly new business development in rural communities across the state of Nebraska, and engaged initially both the University of Nebraska-Omaha campus, the Nebraska Medical Center campus in Omaha, as well as here at UNL through the Institute of Ag and Natural Resources. I had the pleasure of coming to the university now just about 5 years ago, and at the time that I joined the university, President Milliken at the time, one of the very first things he handed me was a report and a review that had been done about 5 years into the history of the Nebraska Rural Initiative. And his challenge to me was that he wanted to know, should we do something bigger? Should we do something bolder? Should we look at the issues associated with not only rural Nebraska, rural America, but the rural regions around the world, and should we be challenging ourselves to work on those? And to be doing that at a broader level than we were currently doing at that time with the Rural Initiative. Fast forward now over the last 4 years. So in 2011, we decided as a university to invest in this area, to move to a bolder level around rural futures. We scoped over the period of about a year and a half of time, how to go about doing that across the campuses of the University of Nebraska and how to engage in this area in a meaningful way. I see Chuck Hasselbrook here, who was on the Board of Regents at the time and was one of the leaders that was advocating for us to move into this area and to think bolder and think bigger. September of 2012, we formally launched what is now the Rural Futures Institute across the University of Nebraska system, and it joined what the university had already been doing by that time in the Grand Challenge of Water for Food with what is now the Dougherty Water for Food Institute that had started in 2010. The Buffett Early Childhood Institute across the university campuses, working in that very important area for children at a very young age, up to 8 years of age. In 2012, the National Strategic Research Initiative that was started in 2013. So I think you see the pattern of these grand challenges around big problems that the university could engage in across all of its expertise and campuses. We were very fortunate to host a first National Rural Futures Conference here in Lincoln in 2011. And that first conference really, in some ways, I think overwhelmed us, Chuck. I think you would appreciate that. Our now director, Chuck Schroeder, of the Rural Futures Institute was part of that conference. We had some nearly 600 people join us from around the United States and around the world who came to dialogue about what an institute like this one might be able to do. We then subsequently launched the Rural Futures Institute formally a year later in September 2012, followed that with a second National Rural Futures Conference in 2013, in October of 2013, again here in Lincoln with a capacity crowd from around the U.S. and around the world. Some of you might remember it in football lore. I was kind of joking with one of our speakers who you'll learn is a Northwestern University graduate here in a few minutes, and you will recognize we're in the same week as the Rural Futures Conference was 2 years ago when we played Northwestern the last time here in Lincoln, and some of you might remember the last play of that game, which we have become all too familiar with this year. In that particular case, we were on the good end of that, and the Rural Futures Conference started the very next day following that game. Chuck Schroeder, we were very fortunate to recruit as our founding executive director of the Rural Futures Institute. Chuck Schroeder, who joined us in December of 2013. You'll get a chance to hear and see a lot from Chuck over the next couple of days during this year's National Rural Futures Conference. So the idea here is that rural places are important. Rural places are important for a multitude of reasons, not the least of which they anchor our landscape. And they anchor a landscape that is tremendously important to us relative to the natural resources that are in that landscape and the stewards that we are as the stewards of those natural resources. And as you know, and as we see trends around the world, we have continued to urbanize as opposed to have development in rural places. More people live in urban environments on an occurring basis over time than rural environments. We certainly know that here in the state of Nebraska in our own history. So the idea is that by working together, we will be able to place importance on rural places, on development in rural places, and successful communities in rural places, in working together on everything from leadership to legal services to health services to education to new business development, the full gamut, if you will, that is required for these communities to be successful and vital. We also know we live in a little different time than the last 50 years. There's more opportunity to not be place-based in terms of economic development, and that there are opportunities out there that didn't exist in our earlier lifetimes for those kinds of new businesses to develop over time. So over the next couple of days, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to participate in a great conference that's been planned by Chuck and his team. We are very pleased that we have some nearly 620 people registered for the conference, about 420, I believe, here in this site in Lincoln, some 200 that are registered at our site at the Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture. We had a great career fair this afternoon to engage young people in thinking about rural opportunities that are out there and linking them with those opportunities. You're going to hear from great speakers tomorrow, kicked off by our very own President Hank Bounds, who I'm glad to see here to my right, joined us this afternoon for our lecture. And I'm supposed to remind you that they will be on time at 8:30 tomorrow morning, Hank, for his kickoff for the conference here in this room. And then there will be opportunities through panel dialogue, through poster sessions, through socialization, through sharing of opportunities that are out there in these rural spaces that I know you'll benefit greatly from over the course of the conference. So I challenge you to have a great time here. Welcome to Lincoln, those of you that are joining us from outside the state of Nebraska and across the state of Nebraska, and we look forward to a wonderful and great conference.